Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another League Two Lowdown review show here on the Football Deck in partnership with Sky Bet. I'm Jack Mitchener, and I'll be your host for this one. And I am delighted to be joined once again by Luke Payne on this podcast. How are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. I feel like I've missed too many at the minute, but I'm back. I did panic because the internet was down. Wasn't because we lost. It was just the internet was down. But we're back. We're finally back after like 3 days. Although it is back to a loss. Yeah, don't really want to talk about that. But luckily, that's not one of our deep dives, so we're fine.
Yeah, we have conveniently avoided both of our losses this weekend, haven't we?
Yeah, just a little bit. Although I
Um,
will mention before we get into anything else, do just want to wish Craig McGillivray the best because he was obviously hospitalised with a bit of a concussion during our game. He's a lovely bloke, so obviously wishing him the best, and hopefully we'll be back in the side very soon.
yeah, fingers crossed we get a positive update on him tomorrow. Yeah, it looks a really nasty one, so wish him all the best. Um, right, with that, we will crack on and move into our deep dives, and we will be starting with Cheltenham Town 1, Walsall nil. Another phenomenal result for the Robins against top of the league Walsall, which makes it 10 points out of 12 since Steve Cotterill returned to the club, which is quite frankly mind blowing, to be honest with you. It did look a little bit like a sort of backs against the wall jobs for Cheltenham. If you look at the statistics of the game, Walsall put them under a lot of pressure across the 90, and they created a lot of chances. But they did, they remain resilient, and they managed to nick it at the death. One of the weirdest own goals I think I've ever seen in that 92nd minute. Unbelievable. I do want to give props because it's really easy to just look at that goal and think, what on earth? But in fairness, Jake Bickerstaff did amazingly before that. Like really, really, really good running, really determined sort of play from out wide to get it into the box. But yeah, Aidan Flint, bless him, he's got absolutely no chance. Um, looking at Walsall, that's 1 point from a possible nine over their last three games, and considering they probably would have looked at those three games, Crawley, Barrow, and Cheltenham, with a lot of confidence, they'll be pretty disappointed, I would imagine. They are still top of the league. I think it's on goal difference now. Most of the top seven are struggling for consistent. In fact, most of the league are struggling for consistency at the minute, so they are still top of the league. Um, but yeah, I mean, it looks like they've definitely had the better of the last couple of games, but they've just not managed to turn it into a win or even a point. What did you make of that, Luke?
Yeah, I mean, it was one that I certainly wasn't expecting it. I'd say it's probably the shock of the day, that's for sure. I mean, first things first, absolutely have to credit Cheltenham for getting the result. It's like I said, obviously one I didn't see coming, but I am going to be a little bit critical here, just a little bit,
Yeah,
uh, because although they've obviously gone four unbeaten now, it's like they've obviously got better in terms of performances in the sense that they are a harder team to beat at this point. I think the fighting spirit of the team, the mentality has improved. But in terms of the actual performance and translating that into how can we impose our style of play on the opposition or anything like that, I don't think they're actually doing it just yet. I feel like they're getting results, but they're not doing it in a sustainable manner. Is probably the way I'd put it.
yeah,
So although the results are great, you do also have to add an element of okay, new manager bounce mentality is obviously going to shift in their favour, but there comes a point where to maintain those results, the performances have to start coming up. I think they've had their rub of the green a little bit. Obviously, we've had the obviously, as you say, fantastic work for the goal, but also it's still a bit of a free going goal.
oh yeah,
You look back to the Gillingham game as well, and it's off the crossbar, and it's a rebound. They have absolutely had their rubber green. That's not going to last forever. So it's also going to be a case of how do they then bounce back when they do eventually lose one? Because as I say, the way they're winning games at the minute isn't sustainable. They will lose one eventually, and I suppose from a Walsall perspective, it's a case of they did enough to break Cheltenham down. Their finishing just wasn't quite there. I do want to give Joe Day a lot of credit. I think last two games he's been fantastic. But Cheltenham haven't been error free in their performances. Even just in the highlights reel for that game, I did watch some of it at the time as well. I mean, they practically passed it out to a Walsall attacker, and they just somehow didn't find the back of the net. There
yeah,
are mistakes in their game, and it's a case of I don't think Cheltenham are beating teams as such. It's more teams are just not quite doing what they should be in the final third. I'd expect Walsall's finishing to be better. I'd expect Gillingham's finishing to be better as well. I think you had 30 odd shots when you played
We
them.
did, yeah, yeah.
And then the only one I look at as a decent performance from Cheltenham for me is the Fleetwood game.
Hmm.
Beyond that, I still have concerns over the performance to make it more of a long-term success. I do have my concerns for now.
Yeah, no, do you know, I do agree with you. I was going to come on to this a little bit later when I talk about another team that are flying, certainly over the last few games. But it is striking me a lot as a sort of new manager bounce mentality shifted, which is great and it's brilliant. It's exactly what they needed. I just hope for Cheltenham that they can keep it going to an extent until they hit that January period, which I think is when Steve Cottrell will then be able to start putting his stamp on that squad a little bit. Um, from one team struggling down the bottom to another. Next game up is Barrow 2, Barnet 2. Another really positive result for Barrow, especially after going down to 10 men again. It's two games running for them now, I believe, isn't it? Josh Gordon put the Bluebirds ahead after 10 minutes before MJ Williams was sent off. He's just lost his head. Idris Khan has absolutely got him hook, line, and sinker there, isn't he? Really unhelpful. I would assume Andy Wing is pretty furious with him because it's just petulance, isn't it? Really. Um, Barnet scored two in the first 15 minutes of the second half through Callum Stead and Adam Senior before Barrow equalised 20 minutes from time. It was a sort of Nick Tavares deflected own goal from an Elliot Newby strike. It was a good hit, to be fair. But yeah, just flew past Owen Evans. Keeper didn't really have any chance, I didn't think, with that. Barnet did, it needs to be said, Barnet had a couple of really good chances to kill the game off when they were 2-1 up. But Barrow, much like they did against Walsall, they held firm. They were resilient. They did what they needed to do, and they've managed to go up the other end and nick one. Result doesn't harm either team. I think, for Barrow, any point at the moment is great because it's just stretching this unbeaten run that they've got, which is it's really, really good for them. I think they're up to 6 now, whilst Barnet still remain nicely in touch with the playoffs. It's a difficult away day. Whilst they'll be frustrated not to come away with all three, better side, home side had 10 men, it's still an away point, and you come away and go, okay, we'll go again. Much more interesting game than I was anticipating, though, I've got to say.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a lot to it. I just think that red card has really, killed the game off in from a Barrow perspective, because I feel like they are capable of more, but it's kind of hard to judge them based on the fact that from 39 minutes onwards they're playing with 10 men, and if anything, it is fair play for actually managing to salvage a point even after going behind. And I mean, MJ Williams used to play for us, even though I was just like, oh, what are you doing?
Mm.
What are you doing? There was just no need.
He's
And
such an experienced player as well. It's just one of those, so frustrating.
it really is. You're just like, it's the middle of the pitch as well. There's nothing to be getting
Yeah.
frustrated over there. You've just got to have a bit more composure. Ultimately, he's cost his team quite badly there. He's quite lucky they've come away with at least something. Um, but still, it's a difficult game to read purely because of that. I'd say it was relatively even up until that point. I know obviously they had the early goal, but statistically it felt like an even game. And obviously once the red card happens, it's kind of floodgates in terms of chances. Obviously Barnet did very well. Good use of the extra man for a while, as you say, didn't kill the game off, which is where things are a little bit disappointing. And then just letting them back into the game. Not happy about that at all. Um, the only other thing I would mention is actually the marking for the opening goal for Barnet is. I'm just not convinced why they're marking. It's a case of they always seem to shift an extra man across, so their marking isn't good enough. Like you'll notice, I think it's Tavares totally leaves his man, and that's the man it falls to straight away. He sort of go halfway. He gets halfway to tracking the man out wide that's possibly about to get beaten, and it leaves a huge gap. I feel like they do that quite a lot with their marking. They don't quite go man to man, and that's proven to be a little bit costly at times. You can see it
Mm.
at various points in the game. But yeah, I'd say overall it's an interesting point. Put it that way. Probably a little bit disappointing for Barnet, but I suppose at the beginning of the day, before you had the knowledge of, oh yes, they're going to have a red card. I think they'd maybe have taken a point at Barrow. It can be a tough place to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I could completely agree with you on that. And I mean, for the next game, we are staying down at the bottom of League Two, and I think that gives everybody a good indication of how the results went this weekend. Um, Crawley 4, Bristol Rovers 0. Scott Lindsay's done it to me again. Just as I give up on them and suggest that they might get relegated, they do this, and it just rip up all your notes and throws everything out the window. Um, Look, it's an unbelievable result for Crawley, and it proved an awful lot of people wrong. I think specifically about the concerns around scoring goals without Harry McCurdy, myself included. If anybody listened to the show midweek, um, but I can't. You can't look past Bristol Rovers here. I mean, that's their third straight defeat, having conceded 4 goals in each of them. And to be completely honest with you, Tranmere and Crawley being two of those sides, that isn't good enough for a side that are looking to try and get promoted. Um, you know, I found it interesting that Tom Lockyer signed in the week and he was straight into the starting 11. I personally didn't see that, but it was an interesting decision. Um, it all started with a moment of pure madness from Jack Sparks. He effectively punched the ball away from the goal after about half an hour, and luckily for the Gas, it was Ryan Loft that stepped up for the penalty because it then hit the post and it remained 0-0. But going down to 10 men after half an hour is a rough one. Um, After that, though, it was absolutely one-way traffic. Crawley scored 4 goals without reply. It was an own goal by Alfie Kilgore, who's having a bit of a torrid time at the moment, you've got to say. And I imagine you saw the video of him after the game as well, which we might well discuss. Um, that was in first half stoppage time, and then Harry Forster, Scott Malone, and Louis Flower grabbed a goal each in the second half. I couldn't have read the game more wrong, if I'm honest. I honestly didn't see this coming at all, especially after the way Darryl Clark was talking last week. But fair play to Crawley. It's an absolutely massive result that it draws them closer to the teams outside of the relegation zone, especially the couple that didn't win this weekend. And hopefully, and I know we've said this before, but it will be able to kickstart some form of consistent run, a form of consistent run for them, I should say. I've got no idea where Bristol Rovers go from here, to be honest. It's been a shocking few weeks. Uh, Starting to wonder whether Darryl Clark's actually getting through to them anymore. This isn't me suggesting that he should be going or anything, but it's just a bit concerning and something seems really off to me.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a mentality problem at this point. I look at the names in the squad, and this was the team I predicted to finish second behind us, obviously. But no, there are names in that squad. The quality isn't a question to me. There's not a moment where I'm thinking these players aren't good enough to get results in this league. It's either the system or it's mentality, and I mean, based on the way that they've capitulated 3 games in a row. I think it has to be the mentality at this point. And it kind of all starts with the red card, which again, totally unnecessary. No reason to do it. Don't know why he thought he'd get away with it. It was just never going to go well for him. Even if you go a goal down, you at least if you're on the pitch, it's still 11 versus 11. You give yourself a better chance. So that's frustrating. I will say Alfie Kilgore is becoming quite the prolific striker. That's 2 own
He
goals in
is.
3 games now.
He
So,
is.
ouch. But no, it just comes back to mentality. I think in terms of goals conceded, they are now the joint worst alongside Cheltenham. So that's rather telling in itself. Obviously, you do have to give Crawley some credit. Um, you know,
Oh,
they
absolutely.
were
Yeah.
ruthless. We're just talking about how Barnet didn't do enough to kill the game off. Crawley did exactly what Barnet should have done. Even with the missed penalty, you look at those chances and you think, there could have been more as well on top of that. It's that ruthless nature that you have to have if you want to find any success in this division. I think as far as consistency goes, like I remain to be convinced by that. I think that's their first win in 6 for Crawley. Um, could I see them potentially getting a couple of results off the back of this? Potentially, yeah. I haven't checked their fixtures, but um, do I see them suddenly going on a run? Perhaps not. I think it was just a case of they were up against a team that's on the floor, pretty much through the floor at this point. If we're being totally honest, I'm not too sure what the solution is at this point, because I mean Darrell Clarke isn't a bad manager, and like I said, these aren't bad players. It's just there is such a blatant mental problem, and well, something's got to give eventually. And in football, most of the time, that ends up being the manager.
Yeah, it
I
does.
don't, I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to point at him too much because, like I said, I don't think he's a bad manager. It's just something needs to change, some kind of change in environment just to get them going again. Bristol Rovers are not a bad side, but you wouldn't know it based on the results.
No, not at all. And it's such a weird one because you don't. I mean, they started the season poorly, which you could understand and get your head around, considering there's relegation and turnover, a new manager, all of that stuff. They then go on a was it a 10 game unbeaten run, I think, and they were looking like they'd sorted themselves right out, and then they've just fallen off a cliff again. I don't know. I think the issues there stem much deeper than just Darrell Clarke, but unfortunately, he's the guy in the limelight, isn't he? So. Um, we shall move on. Next game up, we've got Crewe Alexandra 3, Grimsby Town 2. Again, another result I didn't see coming, I'll be honest, before a ball was kicked. And I'm genuinely over the moon for Lee Bell after the scrutiny he's been facing. I really like him as a neutral and an outsider. And yeah, it's a big win and a huge win for him personally, as much as it is for Crewe. Really entertaining first half. Jamie Walker put the Mariners ahead after only 6 minutes, and then Emre Tezgel bagged his first 2 goals of the hat trick that will be coming to turn the tide until Jamie Walker then scored again to make it 2-2 at half time. Tezgel grabbed his hat trick with 3 minutes left to win the game for Crewe. Really good hat trick as well. It wasn't a scrappy hat trick by any stretch. It was 3 really well taken goals. Um, I do want to just a bit of a mention to Tommy O'Reilly and Justin Amalizor. I think I've got that right. Both of those two grabbing a couple of assists each. So they obviously had a really good game apiece as well. Um, Only a couple of points separate these two now. Crewe are sort of sat just outside the top 7, and Grimsby are sat in 6th. I mean, we could be saying this anywhere down to 13th. So, both sides still in a very good position. There's no, good result for Crewe. No need to panic for Grimsby, all of that stuff. But how did you see it, mate?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you, I didn't necessarily see this result coming. I was thinking very much, oh yes, routine win for Grimsby. That's kind of it. Uh, but I mean, it's proven to be anything but. And I mean, I've just got to shout out Emre Tezgel again. He used to be on loan at us, and he was unfortunate with us because he was Max Dean's understudy, and you don't play ahead of Max Dean because Max Dean's a little too good. Um,
Yes.
but I think this was just the moment he needed. It was just he's had goals in cup competitions, but in terms of league, he just wasn't quite finding the back of the net. So the fact he's got 3 in one go against a side that we're expecting to be up there towards the end of the season, that's going to be absolutely huge for his confidence. They're obviously without Josh March at the minute as well. If you have a confident Emre Tezgel, which I think you have to be fair, even for the first goal, first time strike, um, yeah, I think that will make a lot of difference, and that will do both him and the squad some good over the coming weeks. But then I think just in general in this game, defending is overrated apparently. Because the defending, what was the defending? I mean, it was kind of summarised by McJanet totally missing that first one. I don't understand how he's managed that, to be honest. But yeah, there was. I think it was the second one actually. Crewe's second goal that frustrated me from a Grimsby perspective. Because I think it's a cross into the box from the left, and it took Grimsby so long to shift bodies
Mm,
across just to get to the 2 or 3 players on the other side. It's just like, what is this defensive shape? It's clearly not right. Again, these players are capable. We just need to, think about it a little bit more. Um, Yeah, it's just one of those. I think it does expose weaknesses in both teams defensively. Uh, I'm not necessarily surprised that both are relatively decent going forward, but it's a balance that they're going to have to find. The same way that we talk about Swindon being like, oh yeah, they score lots of goals, they just can't defend. Obviously Grimsby and Crewe aren't quite that extreme, but I'd say based on this game, defensive work to be done for sure.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And yeah, it did seem like two sides that have an awful lot of focus at the top end of the pitch. Yeah, Grimsby is an interesting one because I think if you look at the last 3 or 4 games, it is seeming to be dropping off a little bit. Um, but I just think with the quality they've got going forward, you can't you know you can't imagine they won't go back on a consistent run of beating teams and scoring lots and lots of goals. Um, we'll drop back down towards the bottom of League Two again, and another bonkers result, and one that again I don't know how many people would have actually predicted before the game. But Harrogate nil, Newport County 3. It can literally only happened in League Two. This kind of a result. Bottom of the league, Newport. They'd only scored 11 goals in 13 games before this one. Um, Go to a notoriously difficult side to beat away from home, and they pump them 3-0. I mean, it's unbelievable. Goals from Courtney Baker Richardson. There was a Bobby Faulkner own goal and another goal for Cameron Antwi. Kai Whitmore grabbing a couple of assists in that. I don't. I'm not going to go as far as to say that Newport sort of dominated Harrogate across the entire game, purely because I've only seen the highlights and statistically it looked maybe slightly closer than that. But they created so many chances. I mean, 16 attempts on goal, 8 on target for Newport. That makes for really good reading, especially for a side that have struggled as much as they have certainly recently. Harrogate, on the other hand, they'll be a bit worried after that, I think. For the first time, I'm sort of looking at them and I'm thinking, ooh, if you've got that kind of a performance in you, and maybe they are closer to a bottom two side or a bottom four side than I maybe thought they were a few weeks back. I have liked what they've done in spells, but yeah, there's just been a couple of those results that you think, oh, I don't know. Um, Newport remain bottom, but they've closed the gap to Accrington now in 22nd. They're only 1 point behind Harrogate, who are up in 19th. So massive result for Newport.
Oh yeah, it is an absolutely huge result for Newport, but I think from a Harrogate perspective, this is the most disappointed I've been with any of their performances this season. For me, it was just a question of desire, and Newport wanted to win that game a whole lot more than Harrogate did, and you can see that even just from the highlights reel. I think the second goal was probably the best example of that. Newport only had a couple of players forward, and they didn't have possession. How have they
Mm,
managed to score from that position? It just shouldn't have happened. Uh, you can't be getting out muscled in those sorts of positions. For me, it's just a case of Harrogate just never showed up, which is why I'm concerned because I know they're capable of more than what they've shown there. And for me, it's not really a question of ability. It kind of comes back to mentality again. Uh, I still think they're more than capable of avoiding that sort of relegation scrap, but you have to show up and you have to want to win. Like it's as simple as that sometimes. And for me, I think Newport applied themselves well, and I mean they just kept battering Harrogate. They didn't give them a moment's rest. As soon as they realised that right, these guys aren't up for it, attack, 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 and I mean it could have been more. It really could have been more. I think 3-0 was honestly flattering to Harrogate based on that performance. So a bounce back is absolutely necessary. You cannot perform like that 2 weeks in a row. From a Newport perspective, that's absolutely huge. The confidence that will give them as well, because obviously they've had their struggles, and well, goals being one of those struggles. It doesn't bring them out of the bottom two just yet, but it puts them in range. And just staying with the pack, that's a good start, and you've got a platform now you can build off.
yeah, absolutely. I do wonder with Harrogate whether that was a case of complacency, but whatever it was, you just don't associate that with Simon Weaver and what they've done over the last 3 or 4 years that they've been an EFL club. Very strange. Um, We should move on. Moving back up towards the playoff places, we had Notts County at home to Cambridge United. Notts coming away 2-0 winners there, continuing their unbelievable home form, to be honest. And they're starting to look more and more like real challengers under Martin Paterson for me. It looked like a relatively tight game, certainly up until the first goal. Notts broke the deadlock on it. It took 76 minutes. Jody Jones put in a beautiful cross, and it found Alessandro Jatta at the back post. And whilst there was a defender sort of battering the ball into the net, it was always going in. Jatta then killed the game off on, I think it was on 90 minutes with his second of the match. Absolutely bullied Kellen Watts, and bit of fortune with the ball flicking on his way, but finished it really well from about 18 yards out. Another bad away result for Cambridge. It didn't really look to me like they created an awful lot, to be honest with you. I know that I think they might have. There was a highlight I saw of them sort of header at the back post, went over the crossbar, but I didn't see much from Cambridge that would have worried Notts throughout that game. And to make matters worse for Harris, Shane Lavery, I feel like maybe I've jinxed him, so I do apologise to all Cambridge United fans. But he went off after about half an hour, which is a massive blow. Again, I mentioned in the week how good he is at this level if he can stay fit, and it's another bad one for him. Notts push up into fifth. They're only 2 points off Walsall up in top, while Cambridge they're down in 13th, but again, 2 points off the playoffs. It's an away result. Dutch Savage go again. Doesn't do them too much harm. But as I've said before in this podcast, everybody's struggling for consistency, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are. I mean, this just looked like a total like grinder of a match. I think both teams pretty much cancelled each other out. To be honest, there really wasn't much going on in the final third. I mean, considering Notts won 2-0, they actually didn't even have a shot in the first half
Mm.
at all. And that was kind of the nature of the game. As you mentioned, Cambridge did have a couple of headed chances, but beyond that, didn't create all that much. In the end, it just turned out to be having a player that can a game changer, I suppose. And Alessandro Giatta was that. Obviously, the two goals. They had 3 shots on target in that game. All of them were him, and obviously 2 of them have ended back of the net. The second one for me, really loved the finish on that one in particular. Yeah, it continues a good run of form for them, but in terms of Cambridge, I still have concerns. I don't see the star quality. That's the sort of game where you just look for that player that is gonna change the game. Not had that in Jatta. For me, I don't see anyone in that Cambridge side that can do that. They can grind out results, of course they can. That's kind of been their season in a nutshell so far. But in terms of having someone you can rely on to turn you into a top team, I'm not necessarily convinced at this moment in time.
Yeah, yeah, it's fair. Again, I just think they're lucky at the moment, Cambridge, just in the fact that everybody is beating everybody, so the gap is just remaining really, really tight. Eventually, it will split, as we all know, but at the moment, it is almost looking like a top 13 more than it is a top 7. It's pretty crazy. Um, I did mention midweek as well, just to touch on it. I thought I did say should Notts win that game. I think Martin Patterson, in my opinion, and I appreciate we've got team of the month and everything coming out, but I think he should be manager of the month for October because they've been absolutely brilliant. Obviously, I understand Steve Cotterill has won as many points, 10 in 12, as Patterson has, but I just think it's about appreciating what Patterson has done and what they've put together and the processes that they've got to be a side that everybody kind of wrote off in the summer, and there was a lot of jibes and everything to really putting together a team and a squad that look like they're going to be in this for the long run. They look like they could be consistent, and if you can be that good at home over the course of a season, you're probably going to be up there. Um, so yeah, fair play to him and fair play to Notts County. I think definitely ones to look out for. Right, well that was our six games that we were going to deep dive. So we'll move on to the other results. Plenty more talking points across the other games. Fleetwood Town beat Accrington Stanley 2-1, 2-1 at Highbury. Bromley beat MK Dons 2-1 at Hayes Lane. Gillingham losing 2-1 at home at Priestfield to Salford City. Oldham Athletic and Shrewsbury Town played again unexpected for me, but a really entertaining, exciting 2-2 draw at Boundary Park. Swindon and Colchester United. I don't know if anybody would have bet on these two drawing 0-0, but drew 0-0 at the County Ground. And Tranmere Rovers getting a 1-1 draw at home to Chesterfield. Have you got any talking points? Anything you want to pick up on those games, Luke?
Uh, yeah, got a few little bits. Obviously, I'll pick up on Don's game because
Please do.
why wouldn't
Yeah.
I? Yeah, obviously frustrating one for us. We've obviously done well to get ourselves in front, rotated our strike force a little bit, and Rashawn Hepburn-Murphy has absolutely made the most of it. Fair play. But I think it was just a game we never really settled into. I think we very much played Bromley's way. Yeah, the ball just doesn't touch the ground when you play Bromley at their place. And I think we got sucked into that a little bit, but ultimately that's their identity and it works for them. And you've got to find a way of beating them. I don't think we really had that. We had chances, we just didn't put them away. But I'd say fair play to them that they got a decent result there. There is a reason that they are still unbeaten at home this season. But yeah, obviously I'm not too bothered by that one individual result. Performances are still reasonable. The concern is more just is our goalkeeper okay? Is he
Of
going to be
course, yeah.
back match fit for the next league game in a couple of weeks' time? Although now that you've mentioned manager of the month, in a way, kind of glad we lost because otherwise it would have been Warren because he would have won 4-4. So we would have
Yeah,
had the curse.
yeah.
I can do without that, so that's fine. We can start winning again now. But no, fair play to Bromley. There aren't going to be many teams that beat them at their place. I don't think. I think the other main thing I was going to pick up on actually was the Tranmere Chesterfield game.
Mhm.
I don't recall the last time I've seen Chesterfield have as low as 43% possession.
I made the exact same notes, unbelievably, mate. Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
Yeah, I just wasn't expecting it, especially against Tranmere. I mean, I know it's at Tranmere's place, but even so, if we're talking about identity, having the ball is very much Chesterfield's. Um, I don't know. I wonder if it was the early goal that kind of changed things a little bit. Obviously, they still had a few chances here or there that they should have done better with, but it almost felt like they went into Walsall mode of we're going to sit back now and counter when we
Mm.
can. Yeah, they kind of just went right in. Right, we're winning. We'll hold the lead for the next 80 or so minutes, and I mean, they kind of got punished for it at the end. So frustrating. I'd like to see them be a bit more positive against sides that you would hope they'd be able to put away. I know obviously Tranmere have kind of flagged a little bit in recent weeks. I think Chesterfield could have taken the game to them a whole lot more. Uh, but yeah, other than that, the only thing I will say is the Oldham Shrewsbury game was probably quite unlucky not to be in one of our deep dives. It's just we hadn't covered knots in a while. So, but because
Very
that
much
Oldham,
so.
yeah, it looked like a very good game that actually. I mean, Oldham had a very good first half. To be fair to them, they just didn't capitalise enough, and then all hell broke loose in the second half, and that looked like quite good fun for a neutral. Actually, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, for sure. And do you know what? For Shrewsbury, I think, again, you look before the game and you think, all right, Boundary Park, probably the toughest place to go, with the exception of Bromley at the minute, just to go and win a game. Um, and they find themselves go 2-1 up in the 91st minute, and you think, oh my God, you're going to come away with there with an away win, and they've somehow, really frustratingly for them, only come away with the point. But it is another really good result for Shrewsbury. I'll say, and they are starting to look like a team, a proper team that aren't just going to turn up once every 3 or 4 games. They are starting to put something together. So fair play to them and Appleton. Um, just a couple of other bits from me on some of the other matches. I think just to pick up on the Fleetwood game, I think that's actually a really good home win for them. Again, I called them. I think I described them as uninspiring in midweek, just from their start of the season. But Aki are slippery customers, and another good performance off the bench for Ched Evans, who's starting to show himself as being a little bit of a game changer coming off the bench as a second half sub. So yeah, good for them. I will cover our game if I have to.
You do.
Someone's going to have to, aren't they? Yeah. Look, I feel like I'm in the minority with my take on the game, to be honest. So I'm a little bit wary of saying what I want to say, but we we did set up very front-footed, very strangely front-footed for us. We started with Palmer, Holden, Vokes, and Josh Andrews all playing up front. We had three strikers, which did clearly leave us very bare in midfield. Glenn Morris, our goalkeeper, went off injured after about a minute. I don't understand how he came out to the pitch and didn't know he was injured before he went off. He did, yeah, very strange one. Never seen a goalkeeper go off so early. But Jake Turner came on and he did look shaky to start with. There's no doubt about it. But he's a guy who's not played football for ages, and I just think it's going to be that way sometimes. And Salford absolutely cut through us with their eyes closed for the first two goals. Really, really poor from our perspective. And it was, in part, it was definitely because we'd set up the way we'd set up, and we did make it easy for them. But at the same time, I look at us. We've got six first team players out at the moment. Genuine first team players out. Our best defender wasn't available. He was suspended from the game before. We have no wingers in the team. Aaron Rowe was on the bench, and he's probably 50% sort of match fit at the moment. Um, to my mind, there wasn't much else we could have done, and I did say midweek I thought we were going to struggle with changing things up mid game and everything because I just didn't think we had the players available. Um, and actually, after we went 2-0 down, whilst we've given ourselves far too much to do, I actually thought we were the better team. We created a lot of good chances. We missed a penalty at 1-1. That was a shame. That was annoying. And had we scored it, who knows? It might have been a different game entirely. Um, but we created some really good chances. I think Salford keeper Matt Young really impressed me. I think he's only 19, isn't he, or whatever he is, but he really impressed me. He wasn't just a penalty save. I just thought he commanded his box really well, and he pulled off a couple of really good saves. We had one cleared off the line. Like in on another day, that's a 2-2 draw. There was some boos after the game, which was a bit disappointing from our perspective. Again, I'm a bit. I don't know. I suppose I'm probably more positive now than I ever have been, and I just think we've had a 21 game unbeaten run. I know we've had five bad results in the league, but we've been in every single game. Grimsby's an anomaly, but we've been in every single match. We've been within touching distance of a point or a win, and it's just not coming off for us at the moment. But it isn't for everybody. Every team is inconsistent. Nobody is looking like the sort of out and out best team in the division at the moment. Um, to be fair, arguably you guys kind of are. I know you lost this weekend, but I suppose you look very good. But nobody is going out and winning every single game. So and we also don't have a manager. We haven't had a manager on the touchline for what 4 games. So I just think there needs to be a bit of perspective. But that's just me. Um, Anything else to pick up on? Swindon Col U. I know it was a 0-0, but I think great point from Colchester's perspective. Continues this really good run that they're on. Tough place to go. I think it's another opportunity gone for Swindon though, and I think their October's been quite disappointing. Um, and I do think whilst Drinan is still scoring goals, I think their goals have dried up a little bit, and they're showing to be I don't know, maybe they're not quite as good of a side as we might have thought they were at the start of the season. Um, just to cover back on Tranmere, really pleased for them because I again said midweek for them if this was a kind of must not lose, you've just had a great result, don't go and lose your next game. Just get yourself a point, and they did really really well. Another goal for Connor Jennings as well, who's on fire. Um, yeah, again, plenty that went on. It was a really exciting weekend again, and very unpredictable as has been the case since the very start. Um, Right, well, that brings us to the end of this League Two Lowdown Review show on the Football Deck in partnership with Sky Bet. I'm not entirely sure what format we're going to be following for the next week because clearly we've got FA Cup weekend next weekend, so I think we'll be getting a couple of shows out, but they'll be slightly different.
Yeah, we have ideas. I think we need to discuss those ideas more, but then we should have something else. So
Yeah,
I'd say watch this space
watch
is
this
kind of
space.
where we're
Yeah, exactly. I like it. But yeah, look, please like, comment, subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube, and please make sure you download the podcast from wherever you get your podcast from via audio. And please don't forget to like and comment on our socials because I say this all the time, but we really do enjoy the engagement, and it only helps us to learn more about what's going on with everybody's clubs individually. Um, I'm Jack Mitchener, and he's Luke Payne, and thank you all very much for tuning in. We'll see you in the week.